so many people in this country so happy at an election result which happened somewhere else. Tom Slater's here. Tom, very good morning to you.
Morning.
I mean, there's an awful lot of support for Donald Trump in this country, particularly from our viewers and from our listeners, because they see it as a kind of a totem, if you like, a totem pole for what might happen over here next.
I know, and it's both our sort of pleasure and our curse, I guess, to be downstream from American politics.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people sense that there has been a period in which the sort of anti-populist forces, the kind of more woke authoritarian forces in politics have been in the ascendancy.
Right.
That's certainly not the case anymore.
No.
And there's going to be a lot of questions asked about, you know, whilst obviously there's not a direct knock-on effect between what happens in one country and another, it does feel like the tide is turning again against the sort of administration we saw in the US and against the sort of one that we've got here in the UK.
Exactly, because it looks more and more, as we see across Europe moving to the right, that Britain is very much an outlier. Britain is the only people in the current sort of climate, I would say, in the last 2 years, who have voted for a left-wing government.
And it's one of those things where people, as soon as you have an election go one way, people really want to declare the war over, that it's always going to be that. At that kind of brief period in which you had Brexit and the Trump election and these populist parties kicking off all across Europe, whenever there's an election that goes the other way, everyone wants to declare populism dead.
Yeah.
I think it's just in the UK, we're just at a different point in that cycle where we have parties of the kind of new establishment and parties of this new insurgent populism. And they're going to have good elections and bad elections, but that is how politics shakes out now.
Right.
And I think that's where we're going to be at for the next 10 years.
Absolutely. Let's look at the front pages. Daily Telegraph got a great big... Most of them are using that great big picture of Donald Trump pointing at the camera, because the one thing we know about Donald Trump is that he's an incredibly good and media-savvy operator. We saw his speech, we carried his speech live yesterday on the show, and he hit all the right buttons. You know, it was warm, it was kind of all-embracing, it was inclusive. He wasn't threatening anybody. He was just saying, look, we're going to make America great again. We're going to come back and we're going to restore America to the way it used to be. We're going to bring common sense back to the table. And it didn't sound in any way aggressive. Trump's clean sweep is what it says on the front page of the Telegraph, 223 to 294. I mean, it was a magnificently big win. Daily Mail, a comeback to Trump, all comebacks. You're rehired, front page of the Sun. Daily Express, I quite like. He's been shot, convicted of a crime and branded a fascist, but he's still the people's choice. Even the Financial Times, Trump is back, which is a great picture, actually. That's him holding on to his wife, Melania. I mean, it was quite an event, wasn't it? Only the Guardian, of course, manages to strike a note of negativism where it says American dread. Then followed by 25 pages of news, analysis and opinion. 25 pages. So, you know...
a hell of a lot of dread.
It's an awful lot of dread. In fact, I might just have a look and see what sort of rubbish they've got in here. But the Guardian and all of the kind of, you know, left-wing proletariat, if you like, commentariat, has been in absolute freefall since this happened, because none of them saw it coming, which amazes me.
Because he did win before. That's the other thing. Right. The idea that it was so incredibly unthinkable.
And when he lost, he didn't lose by much, actually.
No, exactly. And he got a very high proportion of the vote last time, although, of course, he did come short up against Joe Biden. But, like, this Mirror front page as well, where the headline is, what have they done again? The sense of disbelief...
Yeah, what's it going to do with them?
I find really, really strange, because it's he has won before. Also, if you were looking at the polls, it was clear that he was in with a pretty good chance.
Yeah.
And also, if you just had a sense of which way the wind was blowing, you know, since those assassination attempts, the way people rallied behind Trump, since there was a kind of clear sense that Kamala Harris had been kind of found out as a empty suit of a politician who couldn't really inspire anyone, despite that brief spasm of hysteria amongst the Democrats after she was selected. It was obvious that at the very least he had a shot. And yet now everyone is so shocked and surprised. Yeah. It's really, really odd.
Yeah. And also, again, if you go back, you know, long enough, you can find plenty of people on the Democratic side who would say, don't, whatever you do, put Kamala Harris in as the candidate, because she's just not very good. You know, she came in as a sort of diversity hire into the White House. Joe Biden picked her purely and simply because she was a woman of colour, and he thought that might help him in certain communities getting a vote out. But at the end of the day, she suddenly went from being completely and utterly useless, having been a very kind of non-entity type sub, I would say, sort of healthy vice president. She suddenly got thrusted into the mainstream, and suddenly everybody went, oh, she's brilliant, she's fantastic, and suddenly the narrative changed, and she was never brilliant or fantastic, she was always very mediocre. And even last night, I don't know if we've got a clip, I think we have, here's Kamala, who waited a very long time, hours and hours and hours after Donald Trump, who claimed victory at sort of in the early hours of the morning. She finally, about 12 hours later, had this to say.
The outcome of this election is not what we wanted, not what we fought for, not what we voted for, but hear me when I say, the light of America's promise will always burn bright.
Yes, indeed. And one of the arguments that is made about sort of Donald Trump and what he's going to do, terrible things, is the thing in The Guardian, abortion rights in more peril as issue fails to galvanise voters. The Democrats have managed to convince people that basically Donald Trump's trying to ban abortion, which he's never done. And, you know, he's never said he wants to ban abortion. He's never said anything other than he wants the individual states of America, who have always decided what the rules are in their locality, what the term limit is, and whether it's 12 weeks or whether it's 16 weeks in terms of how pregnant you are. So, I mean, you know, these kind of feminists who get up on their hind legs and go, oh, my God, you know, he's trying to interfere with, you know, human rights, he's trying to interfere with reproductive rights. No, they're just trying to put a kind of what you might call a sort of a case around when you can get an abortion, how far into your pregnancy you can't get an abortion, which seems to me to be perfectly reasonable.
And he's also, in surprising fashion, actually managed to dodge and deflect the demands placed on him by the sort of pro-life wing of the Republican Party, which is very strong, to not go for a kind of federal abortion ban. That's something that he could have easily have been sort of pushed and urged towards. But he does have this tremendous ability to kind of impose his will on the Republican Party, to even go against what were previously quite important orthodoxies of it. So it's feasible that if there was another Republican candidate up, that they would have been pushed and tempted to do something more draconian and drastic.
Because Donald Trump, in the end, socially, is not that conservative.
Exactly. He was a Democrat until relatively recently. He's also got a mix of views on things like economics and trade and so on, which are quite unusual for a Republican candidate. But I think because he's demonstrated that he can deliver success for the Republican Party, a lot of people are just happy to go with it.
No, absolutely right. And one of the things that's been spectacular over the course of the last 24 hours has been the meltdown of the left, and not just in America, but in this country as well. Have a look at this. This is TikTok, right? Just a little sample of some of the reactions to the Trump victory.
Yo, I'm scared to go to sleep. I might wake up a slave. I'm sorry. No! Why?
This is all prank, right? Like we're just gonna wake up tomorrow morning and everything's gonna go back to the way it'll be a psych. It'll be like a really bad dream.
All I can say is how dare you?
Yeah, it's called democracy, ladies and gentlemen. Some people vote for one thing, some other people vote for another thing, and at the end you add up who's voted more for one thing rather than the other thing, and you either win or you lose. I mean, incredible, isn't it?
It is incredible. I mean, I wonder how much of this is just performative. There's something about watching someone calmly set up the camera, press record, check that it's on, and then start screaming.
Yes.
You think this is so ridiculous. But, you know, these, in a way, it's proof that all of that over-the-top rhetoric from the Democrats, the idea that Donald Trump wasn't just a right-winger who you might disagree with on a bunch of issues, but it's like the second coming of Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
There's obviously a not...
Or Adolf Hitler, as I like to call him.
As they like to say over there. There's not an insubstantial portion of America who probably believed all of that.
Yeah.
You know, all of that craziness.
You can find people all around the world who will tell you that Donald Trump is literally the Antichrist. And, you know, when he comes in, there will be no more... Well, let's face it, I mean, when Oprah Winfrey gets up on the day before the poll actually starts and people are asked to start voting and says, you must vote for Kamala Harris, otherwise this will be the last ever election in America because Donald Trump is going to do away with democracy. You're kind of going, sorry? Have you gone completely mad? Have you lost the plot?
It wasn't too long ago Joe Biden was suggesting that, you know, Jim Crow would come back if the MAGA Republicans got back in power. It's worth saying that there is a fair amount of kind of fear-mongering on both sides. I mean, it was interesting, on the run-up to the election, you had Elon Musk making a similar point that this will be the last election unless... And that is a regrettable fact of American politics now, that they all have to kind of preach doom and gloom. But nevertheless, this specific claim that everyone's going to be sort of rounded up and this is going to be the end of democracy.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. And you would hope that now that it hasn't worked spectacularly for a second time, they would just park it. Because if nothing else, it's just grim to constantly trot out the worst period in history just to make political points, you know.
Sure.
But they don't see it that way.
No,
obviously.
they don't. And of course, the other thing that I suppose has been established very well, and for hopefully the rest of the time, is that the endorsement of so-called celebrities makes not a jot of difference at all. Whether it's Lady Gaga, Oprah Winfrey, you know, Julia Roberts, whether it's Barack Obama and Mrs. Michelle Obama, whether it's Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, whether it's Eminem. Whoever it is, it doesn't matter. Nobody's voting for you because somebody in Hollywood said it was a good idea.
And I think actually the whole kind of like celebrity class, the whole kind of Hollywood set, they've just made themselves look so ridiculous over the past few years that people have never made up their minds on politics on the basis of who their favourite film star. I mean, it's so patronising to suggest otherwise.
It's pathetic, isn't it?
But they are particularly not taken seriously now. Where to be in Hollywood and to be a famous pop star or whatever is to be synonymous with being a bit of an idiot where politics is concerned, and to get everything wrong and to be on the wrong side.
Well,
so
as somebody pointed out, and I said this on the night of the result coming in, you know, J-Lo was more than happy to sit there weeping with the prospect of Donald Trump coming in to be the next president, but she didn't have much to say about the P. Diddy parties. She was quite happy to go to those and be pictured with P. Diddy, depending on what you see as what you get. But, you know, the hypocrisy is rife, isn't it?
Taking your moral instruction from all these celebrities.
I'm sorry. I'll just get off that guy there and I'll come and tell you which way to vote. Yeah, fine. Thanks very much indeed. Why put your clothes on first, you know? Thank you.